For nearly 3 years, the American media neurotically overcovered Trump-Russia collusion. They simply could not get enough of a story that would explain away what they found to be inexplicable. How the hell did Donald Trump win that election in 2016? The media's obsession with the allegation that Trump and Russia colluded to steal 2016 was endless. In fact, in the 5 weeks after special counsel Robert Mueller was appointed to investigate Trump-Russia collusion, the 3 major broadcast networks devoted around half to 60% of their shows to this story. They couldn't get enough of it. Any new detail, even the smallest minutia, the whole story had to be told all over again and take up half the show. On CNN and MSNBC, cable, the story ate up nearly a third of the coverage over the span of nearly 3 years. Think about that. Thousands and thousands of hours talking about Trump-Russia collusion.
Russia attacked our democracy. It was an act of war by a hostile foreign power.
Russia did interfere with our election, and the president couldn't bring himself to say a word about that.
All of these intelligence experts saying Russia hacked the election.
There is now strong consensus on the scope, nature, and intent of Russia's interference.
We do know this. The Russians offered help. The campaign accepted help. The Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help.
Shifty. We wanted to take you back to just remind you how exaggerated the coverage was of this story, to illustrate just how ridiculous yesterday was, when the director of national intelligence, a former Democrat, spoke at the White House and gave an explosive update on the most covered story of the past decade, Trump-Russia collusion. After nearly 3 years of nonstop coverage, the media, of course, would erupt when Tulsi Gabbard revealed a formerly classified report that documented evidence showing an incredible twist in this saga, right? That the Russians clearly were not favoring Trump. Tulsi indicating the Russians actually concealed the worst dirt that they had on Hillary Clinton, assuming that she was going to win the election. They would just dump it after she got into the White House, because they were not trying to install Donald Trump.
The intelligence community assessment did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness. The information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency.
Just examples of the dirt that the Russians did not reveal before that election. This incredible update to the years-long Russia collusion story, you would think, because any update got so much coverage before, would explode. It did not. It was met with crickets from even the broadcast networks that still try to claim that they're doing news. You know, you get it at MS and CNN, right? But ABC, NBC, CBS, ABC and NBC didn't even cover this yesterday. Dead serious. No coverage on their nightly shows. CBS gave it 24 seconds of a 23-minute show, and they were mocking it during those 24 seconds. Ignoring the story as it damages the Obama deep state after devoting endless coverage to it when the details damaged President Trump. That is how fake the news really is. And again, these are the broadcast networks. Tulsi spoke for about 10 minutes after CNN spent thousands of hours indoctrinating its audience with Russian collusion over the years. Yesterday, CNN couldn't even give 10 minutes to proof that it was all just a spoof. Here was CNN not even 2 minutes into Tulsi's speech.
Concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th.
We've been listening there to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, continuing on what has now been a multi-day effort, not only with public statements like this, but release of documents, to attempt to back up the quite extreme allegation that President Obama is guilty of treason and that he worked in some sort of conspiracy with Hillary Clinton, etc.
Yeah. La 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 la. We don't want to hear this. We don't want to hear this. No. Change the subject. This is, and they think they're journalists at CNN. It's the funniest part. One of those accused of treasonous conspiracy was Obama's director of national intelligence. Tulsi's job under Obama. Tulsi claims he, Brennan, Comey, and Obama essentially demanded a narrative on Russia that did not exist and pushed aside intelligence which stated that Russia really had no candidate preference. And here was James Clapper talking about that last night.
I take seriously when the President of the United States accuses me of being a participant in a treasonous conspiracy, which is ridiculous. It is untrue.
So what will you do if they come after you? What is your plan?
Well, I'll lawyer up, I suppose. Already have.
Already have. In fact, he's had a lawyer since 2017. And here's James Comey's former deputy FBI director talking about the same thing.
The idea that she would use this discussion around sourcing and intents of Russians as some sort of springboard for charges against Barack Obama or John Brennan or Jim Comey or anyone else is absurd. And she either knows it's absurd and she's doing it anyway, or the director of national intelligence actually doesn't understand the nuances of intelligence, which should concern a lot of Americans.
The nuances of intelligence. Like you can pick and choose which intelligence you want to listen to based on your political desires. Those kinds of nuances. The media spent today desperately marginalizing this report released by Gabbard. Here was Morning Joe.
It does seem to me, though, that if you're part of a news organization and one president accuses another president of committing treason to distract from a bigger story, a real story that's happening, you kind of have to report that, don't you?
Yeah, you absolutely have to debunk the nonsense and then focus on the real story. So much what Tulsi Gabbard was putting forward was a complete red herring. It wasn't what the Russia scandal was about.
What specifically is fake? They didn't really explain that. I'd love one person to explain why Russia would conceal allegations of a pay-for-play scandal at Hillary's State Department during her campaign. If they were really trying to end the campaign and usher Trump into the White House, why would the Russians conceal that? Nobody could have an answer for that. They concealed the worst stories the Russians did on Hillary. Why didn't Russia reveal its evidence of Hillary's psycho-emotional problems and the evidence that she was taking tranquilizers? Here's how another MSNBC show spun all this.
The administration clearly looking to change the subject from Epstein to Obama, making these baseless claims. What are the details of this document DNI Tulsi Gabbard had released yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, this gets really into the weeds here, Anna. I mean, what you're talking about is something that happened so long ago, first of all, and making those bold pronunciations that, are just not backed up by what they released from the podium of the White House. So those bold claims that they're making are just not backed up by the evidence.
Yeah, because Epstein's the real big story now. The story that they all ignored for years and years and years, that's the really big story right now. And this is just a distraction. Here is the evidence that guy was asking for, right, released for all to see. The documents showing Russia withheld damaging information on Hillary's health. We have some pictures for you, which would have been devastating had it been released after Hillary had collapsed at the 9/11 ceremony. Remember that in 2016. And here we go. If we have some of these pictures, one part of the report highlighting Russia's allegations of a Hillary campaign bribery scandal. Her State Department offering more funding, more of your money for religious organizations that would endorse her. They're sitting there and they're all screaming that there's no evidence whatsoever. This is what they always do. There's evidence, they just refuse to look at it, and then they just say there's no evidence. Does that sound familiar? Because that's how they handle pretty much every scandal these days that they don't like. Everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmitt tonight on Newsmax.